Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki, Jaya Srimad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Shatushat, Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada ki, Jaya Srimad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Shatushat, Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki, Kantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Hari. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the 6th chapter, 11, text 24. Do you, here.
6:11:24.
Mhm. Okay. Let me just pull it up. Okay. Chapter is the transcendental qualities of Vitrasara. Aham Hare Tava Padaika Mula Dasanudasa Pavitasmi Bhuyaha
Tasandaso Vavitasmi Bhuyaha.
Manasmaneta Supaterganamste.
Smritasya Patergunamste.
Trinitava Karma Karotikaya.
Karma Kuruttukayata.
Aham Hareta Vapadaikamula.
Pareta Padaikamula.
Dasanudaso Bhavitasmi Bhuyaha.
Tasandaso Vavitasmi Bhuyaha.
Manasmareta Supaterganamste.
Smartya Shupatergunamste.
Grinitava Karma Karotikaya.
Karma Kuruttukaya.
Aham Hareta Vapadaikamula.
Pareta Padaikamula.
Dasanudaso Bhavitasmi Bhuyaha.
Tasandaso Vavitasmi Bhuyaha.
Manasmareta Supaterganamste.
Smarate Shupatergunamste.
Grinitava Karma Karotikaya.
Karma Kuruttukaya.
Please repeat.
Amrita Padika
Aham Hareta Vapadaikamula.
Tasandaso Bhavitasmi
Dasanudaso Bhavitasmi Bhuyaha.
Manasmarata Shupatergunamste.
Manasmareta Supaterganamste.
Tava Karma Kuruttukaya.
Grinitava Karma Karotikaya. Would anyone online like to repeat?
Yes, I would like to repeat. Aham Hare Tava Padaikamula.
Aham Hareta Vapadaikamula.
Dasanudaso Bhavitasmi Bhuyaha.
Dasanudaso Bhavitasmi Bhuyaha.
Manasmarete Supater Gunamste.
Manasmaneta Supaterganamste.
Nitava Karma Karotukayaha.
Grinitava Karma Karotikaya. Anyone else? Okay, word hum. I. Oh my Lord. Tava of your Lordship. Pada Eka. Pada Ekamula. Whose only shelter is the lotus feet.
Whose only shelter is the lotus feet.
Dasa Anudasa.
Tasandasaha.
The servant of your servant.
The servant of your servant.
Avitasmi.
Avitasi.
Shall I become. Huyaha.
Yaha.
Again.
Again.
Mana.
Manaha.
My mind.
My mind.
Smareta.
Smareta.
May remember. Asupate.
Asubhate.
The Lord of my life.
The Lord of my life.
Gunan.
Ah,
The attributes.
the attributes.
Te.
Te.
Of your Lordship.
Of your worship.
Gunita.
Gamita.
May chant.
Chant.
Vak.
Vak.
My words. Karma.
Karma.
Activities of service to you.
Activities of service to you.
Karotu.
Karotu.
May perform.
May perform.
Kaya.
Kaya.
My body.
My body.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O my Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, will I again be able to be a servant of your eternal servants who find shelter only at your lotus feet? O may I again become their servant, so that my mind may always think of your transcendental attributes, my words always glorify those attributes, and my body always engage in the loving service of your Lordship. Purport. This verse gives the sum and substance of devotional life. One must first become a servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord, Das Anudasa. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised, and he also showed by his own example, that that a living entity should always desire to be a servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna, the maintainer of the gopis, Gopi Bhartu Padakamalayur Dasa Das Anudas. This means that one must accept a spiritual master who comes into the disciplic succession as a servant of the Lord. Under his direction, one must then engage one's three propensities, namely his body, mind, and words. The body should be engaged in physical activity under the order of the master. The mind should think of Krishna incessantly, and one's words should be engaged in preaching the glories of the Lord. If one is thus engaged in the loving service of the Lord, one's life is successful. Om Gyanatamandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshar Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Translation again. O my Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, will I again be able to be a servant of your eternal servants who find shelter only at your lotus feet? O Lord of my life, may I again become their servant so that my mind may always think of your transcendental attributes, my words always glorify those attributes, and my body always engage in the loving service of your Lordship. Do you mind if I have that? Thanks. So, good morning, devotees. What really stood out for me in this purport is, well, I mean, there's a lot of different things, but that one should engage one's three propensities, so namely his body, mind, and words. That it's a little bit of a checklist of sorts that we can keep in mind throughout our day. You know, are these three things being engaged? So usually, you know, hopefully we at least have one that's kind of by default, maybe. So if you're serving here in the Dom currently, then there's a lot of physical activity to be done, you know, chopping in the kitchen or milking the cows, um, whatever it may be. So that one may be checked off the list. But I was thinking for myself, I'm like, I could, you know, this is a nice reminder that my words should also always be engaged in glorifying Krishna, not just to talk about, uh, you know, all sorts of things like Prabhupada would call it shop talk, Grami Kata. So, um, yeah, just about anything all over the universe, politics, or, I mean, so many things that we can just like talk about, and then we don't actually feel very satisfied at the end. So there, of course, there are, you know, ways to talk about things that are not just Krishna's pastimes, like Prabhupada would also say, and I've heard the point made that, you know, kirtan is not only speaking about Krishna's pastimes, but also discussing what are the impediments to bhakti and inquiring as one of the loving exchanges, you know, inquiring, okay, how can I actually overcome this, work through this? You know, what are the effects of Kali Yuga? Like Dasi Prem Prabhu was giving class and saying that Kali literally means quarrel. So if you just keep that in mind, then it's pretty much like, oh, we're you know, we don't have to wonder why there's some dissension or some disagreement. It's like if you're in the ocean, then you're gonna get wet. So if you're in Kali Yuga, quarrel is going to be there and it's going to be soaking your clothes and all over your body. So we shouldn't wonder um, why there's difference of opinion or disagreement, um, or even sometimes harsh words, even amongst the devotees who are in the hospital trying to get healthy. So yeah, this point of using our words and also the mind. Prabhupada says here that one should think of Krishna incessantly. I was like, that is such a strong word, incessantly. Actually, I kind of want to look it up because that it just really struck out to me that okay, that one definitely, um, you know, if the mind is controlled, like in Bhagavad Gita, it said, you know, the mind is the like the center of all the other senses. So if the mind is engaged, then actually the body and the words will naturally be engaged because whatever is in the mind comes out on the tongue, right? So incessantly is without interruption, constantly. And the example given is she talked about him incessantly. So that would be nice if it was she talked about Krishna incessantly. Like to the point where it's annoying. We should talk about Krishna so much that it actually gets like borderline annoying to even, of course, like, you know, ultimately with devotees it wouldn't be annoying, but um you know, like Venu Madhurya in the class in Mayapur when Devamarita Maharaj he was just giving this class about the glories of Navadvipam and Venu. asked at the end, he was a devotee that was just here, him and his, oh yeah. Oh, you know him, right? Okay, yeah. So he was asking this class at the end and was saying how to, basically along the lines of, gosh, like how to respectfully, I guess if you don't not engage in this like, shop talk with devotees. And he gave the example like, he goes up on the roof in Mayapur to get the laundry and devotees are like, this, that about Trump and this and that. And he's like, so you don't want to, you don't want to be like disrespectful. What do you do? And David Maharaj was like, well, you just say Hare Krishna or I forget what he said, like Jai Garanga or something like that. And yeah, so he's just giving the example, devotees are like, did you hear Trump did this? And you just say, Hare Krishna, go on your way, you're not obligated to talk about it like that. So I was thinking somebody, even a devotee, might be a little bit annoyed by that, or not the spirit soul, but the if there's still the vestiges of the false ego there, then it's like, what? They kind of just like said Hare Krishna in a way of like brushing it off. Um, but actually, it jolts one back into, oh yeah, we're meant right. It's about Krishna actually, and does this actually have anything to do, or is it going to benefit my bhakti? So that's what I mean when I say like talking about Krishna incessantly, like it's giving this example on Google. She talked about him incessantly, and it's like people say that incessantly like it has a negative connotation, like oh my gosh, she talked about him incessantly. So if somebody can say about us, oh my gosh, she talks about Krishna incessantly, then it's actually our good fortune in life, even if of course the false ego could get a bit annoyed by that because the false ego wants to think I'm the center of the universe, or what I'm concerned about is the center of the universe. Yeah. So as I try to do, I always add a footnote to that. That doesn't mean that we're like completely insensitive to devotees, that if they're like, hey, I'm really going through something, I need your help, this and that, and you're just like, have you tried chanting Hare Krishna? Of course, it is good advice, but people, devotees also need to feel heard and understood, especially if they're coming to you for some shelter. So that's the footnote. And then it's like, we slowly can help someone or even help ourselves, like, because the mind doesn't automatically always want to hear just chant Hare Krishna. So there's also creative ways, you can slowly bring them back around to remember it's about Krishna. We're going back to the spiritual world. We have nothing to worry about. So, yeah, so if the mind is engaged, then the words will automatically be engaged, and the body will also automatically be engaged. So I've been reading the first canto, The Passing Away of Bhishma Dev, and there was a couple verses that I wanted to read. Mm, Yeah, they're very nice purports. About like the minute independence of the living entity and uh, how Krishna is actually taking care of the devotee. So the devotee depends on the will of the Lord, and Bhishma Dev is in a position of complete dependence on Krishna, and he's acknowledging that dependence, and he's instructing Yudhishthira Maharaj. It's a very heart-wrenching scene. Before I get into this, though, speaking of heart-wrenching, I was just reading, and speaking of like the emotions that a devotee experiences whenever they become completely dependent on the Lord and devote everything, their mind, words, body, everything to Krishna, is that they're not devoid of feelings or emotions. Sometimes it's like, as devotees, we could feel like practicing, and then rediscover, oh my gosh, actually I have emotions. It's like, yeah, that's what the whole process of bhakti is about. But somehow it's like it can just that very simple fact can be missed that, oh yeah, I have emotions, and actually they can be perfectly fulfilled in bhakti, and we can experience the full range of emotion even within bhakti. So for example, I've been reading with a devotee the third canto, as I've spoken about in other classes, the pastime. Now we're in the part of Vidura meeting Maitreya and their conversation. So basically, Vidura is a cent percent devotee of the Lord. He is just totally enwrapped in Krishna with his body, mind, and words. And Maitreya, Krishna has left the world, and as I was saying in one other class, Vidura is inquiring, and he's inquiring not because he doesn't know, oh, how's Arjuna doing? How is Kunti Devi doing? How's this devotee doing? How's that devotee? Because he's in just complete shock of everything that's happened and that Krishna's left. So he, similarly, whenever he's speaking with Maitreya, he is he wants to inquire about Krishna. He wants to talk about Krishna. So this is another example of indirect, like eventually getting to back to the point of speaking about Swayam Bhagavan Krishna, but he's doing it, as I was speaking, in a roundabout way. This is a different kind of roundabout way though. So he's talking to Maitreya, and he wants to ask Maitreya just directly about Krishna, but because his heart is like so um you know, in so much transcendental agony about Krishna's leaving this world. He's first asking Maitreya Muni about Krishna's like the uh Purusha incarnation. So he's asking him about Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, um, and Kshirodakashaya Vishnu, and Karnadakashaya Vishnu. So he's like, I can't, it's too painful for me to even start by talking about Krishna. And I was reading this yesterday and I'm like, oh my gosh, Bhakti is so full of emotion, and like the Bhagavatam is so full of culture and tact. And it was just really incredible as I've been reading this pastime in the beginning of the third canto, just how much emotion is involved. Intense emotion. And that's what we want out of the material world, is intense emotion. Even people that think that they want to have happy relationships, or this, I just want to be happy, like this and that. It's like, well, really what we crave is absorption. And so sometimes, people will even go to, nobody wants to be sad. Well, why do they go to a sad movie? Why do they, watch heartbreak movies? Why do they sometimes pick a fight with their partner just because they are sad that their partner isn't paying attention to them? And so they're like, hey, I don't know, people just start things to get attention or act out, or little kids also like called protest behavior. Somebody with kids can um, I always give example about children. Uh, Somebody with kids can give an example when a kid gives protest behavior, because they want some attention. It's like there's some satisfaction in it, even though it's not just happy, like we will say we want to be happy in this world. So really what we're looking for is absorption, and the Bhagavatam has it all, and it shows that all of these feelings can be perfectly dovetailed in Krishna service, and you will, every step of the way, if you're with Krishna and you're devoting body, mind, and words to Krishna, you will always have absorption. Krishna will make sure of it. He will arrange situations where, yeah, we will just become increasingly absorbed in Krishna. And that might not always look like, oh, Jai, I'm jumping up and down and I'm smiling and I'm so happy in the kirtan, but also Krishna takes things away from us so that we can then call out to him. So it's like he's like the master. I don't even know what it would be or what occupation, but he's just making all the arrangements constantly. Like, okay, today, now how am I going to get you to, set up some situation that you can come closer to me and be absorbed in me again. Oh, you woke up today and you forgot and you're already thinking about something else? Okay, now how can I, and it could be through an amazing kirtan, it could be through um, you like lose a bunch of money, or you stub your toe, or whatever, you like a deer runs across the road and you're like, Krishna. So yeah, we just have to be open to, okay, how does Krishna want me? How does Krishna want to set things up in such a way that I can become more absorbed in him? Of course, we also have the responsibility because Prabhupada literally gives us a daily program for becoming absorbed in Krishna, or even if we're, going through it like sadhana bhakti, means do it because I said so, even if it feels like mechanical or I don't want to do this or I'm not feeling so absorbed in Krishna, at least Prabhupada's given us the process how to train ourselves up to get there. So, okay, that was about Vidura and Maitreya and how absorbing. So, similarly, in this pastime, I'll read it about in the first canto. Bhishma is so absorbed in Krishna. I mean, he's also one of the Mahajans, like he's always been absorbed in Krishna. But I'll read in order actually, a couple of purports. So this is starting with Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 9, Text 19. So I'll read parts of the purport because they're pretty long. So, okay, purport. Pure devotees of the Lord are all Buddhas, or persons who know the glories of the Lord in different transcendental loving services. As the Lord has innumerable expansions of his plenary form, there are innumerable pure devotees of the Lord who are engaged in the exchange of exchange of service of different humors. Ordinarily, there are 12 great devotees of the Lord, namely Brahma, Narada, Shiva, Kumara, Kapila, Manu, Prahlad, Bhishma, Janaka, Shukadev Goswami, Bali Maharaj, and Yamaraj. Bhishma Dev, although one of them, has mentioned only 3 important names of the 12 who know the glories of the Lord. So, okay, so skipping further down, um, is speaking more about the glories of the Lord, and I'll read from here. These glories of the Lord are exhibited in his in his being subordinated before his devotees, and that is another feature of the glories of the Lord. Shukadev Goswami and the Kumaras, although situated in the transcendental position, became converted by another feature of bhava and turned into pure devotees of the Lord. So keep your ears tuned for this one. This is what I was speaking about, all the different ways Krishna um, arranges for us to be absorbed in him. It says, Prabhupada says, tribulations imposed upon the devotees by the Lord constitute another exchange of transcendental bhava between the Lord and the devotees. The Lord says, I put my devotee into difficulty, and thus the devotee becomes more purified in exchanging transcendental bhava with me. Placing the devotee into material troubles means delivering him from the illusory material relations. The material relations are based on reciprocation of material enjoyment, which depends mainly on material resources. Therefore, when material resources are withdrawn by the Lord, the devotee is 100% attracted toward the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Thus, the Lord snatches the fallen soul from the mire of material existence. So, and then the last point Prabhupada makes, tribulations offered by the Lord to his devotee are different from the tribulations resulting from vicious action. And all these facts are known by the Mahajans and great devotees such as Bhishma Dev. So we hear it so often, oh, it's actually Krishna's mercy that, he takes things away from us, like is known as Hari. But this is very, very nice purport because it explains the mechanics in sort of like what Krishna is thinking. What's the step by step? Why is he doing it? It's not just to be cruel and because he's greedy for love and he's acting out of false ego and he wants to hoggle the attention. It's like he's he's saving one from the tribulations resulting from vicious action and dependence on material resources. It says, placing the devotee into material troubles means delivering him from the illusory material relations. So I've been meditating on that. Actually, the world is meant for purification. So because at least for me, it's very easy to, whenever some reversal comes or, oh, my sense gratification is not being met, and then so if we don't read Srimad Bhagavatam and we don't have we're not cultivating daily intelligence, then it's like there's a fork in the road at that moment when things are not going according to your sense gratification. The one side is like, well, great, that means I just got to ramp things up and get more controlling and get more into like, how am I going to make some arrangements for myself so that I can get exactly what I want? Because if I desire it, that means that the world should give it to me. Or we can use our higher spiritual intelligence cultivated by daily hearing and then think, oh, that's right. This world is meant for purification. So that means that at this point, in the fork in the road, I turn more towards Krishna. And I'm like, thank you, Krishna. Thanks for reminding me that I'm actually not here to enjoy. It's meant to purify me. You're giving me, it's so painful, this situation, because you're purifying me of exactly what I need to be purified of. It's like the more painful, the more it was long due, lifetime after lifetime. It's like this is exactly what I needed. Thanks, Krishna, for the medicine, although it might have been bitter. Because yeah, we really can't control. I mean, this is the disease of the material world, is thinking that we're the enjoyers and controllers. Yes, we hear it so often, but it's such an illusion to think that we're in control. Like I was speaking to a devotee yesterday and I was saying, oh, we're about the how there were those two plane crashes, one in DC and where was the other one? Um, and it's just like, yeah, it's crazy. Like you just don't after me in the beginning of this class, I'm like, yeah, we shouldn't talk about things so related to devotional service. Like, yeah, so there's plane crashes though. Anyway, we did discuss how this is what I'm saying. Like it's like, okay, you just, at least for myself, I try to remind myself like, okay, yeah, brought it up. Like how can we also tie it back to like, oh, this world is suffering, or like that's why it's better to, you know, surrender to Krishna, something like that. So, anyway, my point is that we were talking about how there are these plane crashes and how in America it's very, how am I going to put this? It's just like they make it out to be such a shocking thing. Like, oh, there's thousands of children in Cambodia that are starving, or the refugees from, you know, wherever Northern Africa like got stranded at sea and they just like washed up on the shore or something. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. That's the nature of this world. It makes sense that it would happen to them. But then as soon as there's like some white people on the plane and like Americans, it's like, oh my God, they were figure skaters. How could this ever happen? And it's like just the way Maya works in the US. And this devotee was explaining to me, they're like, yeah, for the rest of the for the rest of the world, it's like it's not a surprise that these kind of things happen in America. Specifically to like, well, these like middle class, quote unquote, successful people, but to Americans, it's just like it's like, I guess because they can identify it, it's like, what is this? These are things that happen in like, it doesn't happen here. Or even Dave Marines and Raj talks about it. He's like, well, it doesn't happen in New Zealand. It happens in like, those earthquakes, or like how there's an earthquake in Christchurch, famous one, or like a tsunami or something. That happens in like Vietnam. That doesn't happen here. So yeah, it's like a facet of Maya. Anyway, going back to the point of that we're not the controllers, is then I was telling her, I'm like, yeah, I'm like so afraid of airplanes. I'm like, man, I don't even want to go on an airplane anymore. I was already afraid of airplanes. It's like I don't like being in situations where there's no control. So, uh, you're like encapsulated, like an elevator, airplane, things like that. And they were just like, oh, that's funny. Like that's weird because it actually brings me a sense of peace that then I'm in an airplane and there's actually um I have no sense of control. I know that I can't do anything. So if the plane goes down, anything like that, it's like, well, it would be a pretty quick death, and yeah, you really wouldn't feel much, and there's nothing you can do about it anyway. So it's just like might as well be peaceful. So we were just talking about this and just talking about the illusion of like how the mind operates. So let's say, for example, somebody that's afraid of flying, you're in an airplane And yes, you're encapsulated. There's no, I don't know how to fly a plane. So if the pilot passes out or whatever, it's like I couldn't land the thing. So you have no control. And the mind just gets the better of you that it's like, then it starts concocting all these like, okay, well, if we were going down, like, what would I do? How would I position myself? What are going to be my final thoughts? Like every time that there's turbulence, you're like freaking out like that. So the mind is like grappling for like it's like in a dark room and it's like trying to find the light switch. It's like, oh my God, how would I control this situation? How and it's grappling so much because there's no sense of control. And we can see that in these kind of instances, I guess whatever you're afraid of, uh, that the mind is just grappling for control and actually take oneself out of the airplane or whatever situation makes you feel similarly and actually we're doing that all the time in material existence, but it's a big illusion. Like you could see somebody that's afraid of flying and they're thinking, okay, I'm gonna do, I would do this and I would do that and maybe I should sit near like an exit row so that I could be the first one out of it. And it's like you're probably gonna die. I think most people in an airplane crash, it's like they do die anyway. But the mind, sorry, I'm kind of going in circles. The mind wants control. But somebody externally that, let's say, is not afraid of flying, like my friend, for example, that I was speaking to, they're like, yeah, it's like pretty ludicrous that you would even be trying to think of how you could survive in this and that because you're probably going to die. So similarly, in this material existence, in our lives, any attempts really to control the outcome or like I'm going to arrange things so that I can be protected this way or I can be happy that way or this or that that's devoid of Krishna consciousness is actually ludicrous. It's a hallucination. And somebody that's self-realized like my friend, sitting on the outside looking in, they're like it's completely nonsensical. It's like you're bound hand and foot. You're in a helpless condition anyway. Um, so you can't do anything. So why are you even wasting so much energy trying? Why are you letting your mind take advantage of you and say, I'm gonna control it in this way and I'm gonna control even, we can do this in relationships, whatever, like if you have a friend or anything that um or spouse or whoever that it's like, oh, well, if I just say the right thing and if I look the right way and if I, if my timing is right and this and that, then I'm going to be able to like control the outcome. And it's so ridiculous and it's such a trip of like, I'm the controller and I'm trying to control because ultimately who I think of myself is as the enjoyer. And to a self-realized person, it just looks absolutely ludicrous. It's like you're wasting so much time and energy that could be, if you know that you're, at the fork in the road, you could have chosen to just use all that energy to actually cultivate a relationship with Krishna, who you don't have to, manipulate or question, does this person love me or will I be taken care of? Or um, yeah, am I going to be happy in this relationship? You don't have to ask, am I going to be happy in this relationship with Krishna? Although the mind does think that, and that's why, if we really were convinced that I'm going to, at the end of the day, I'm going to be more than just happy with Krishna, then we wouldn't keep turning to other things. So, okay, well, my Kindle just died, so um, I don't even remember how I got on that point, but oh, about being the controller and being dependent on Krishna, because we were reading about Bhishma Dev. Okay. All right, I'll just read a little bit shorter parts of the other purports. Okay, so maybe I'll wrap it up with this one. So Bhishma Dev is saying in text 22 of this chapter, yet despite his being equally kind to everyone, he has graciously come before me while I'm ending my life, for I am his unflinching servitor. Purport: the Supreme Lord, the Absolute Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, although equal to everyone, is still more inclined to his unflinching devotee, who is completely surrendered and knows no one else as his protector and master. Having unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord as one's protector, friend, and master is the natural condition of eternal life. A living entity is so made by the will of the Almighty that he is most happy when placing himself in a condition of absolute dependence. The opposite tendency is the cause of fall down. So if we're the opposite tendency is when we're not in absolute dependence on Krishna, and this is the cause of fall down. The living entity has the tendency of falling down by dint of misidentifying himself as fully independent to lord it over the material world. The root cause of all troubles is there in false egotism. One must draw towards the Lord in all circumstances. So that's the point. That's like I was saying, Krishna is trying to make all these arrangements. And then every time we're just like, we go deeper into like, oh great, something bad happened. Now I gotta control the situation even more. Krishna's just like puts his palm on his face. He's like, oh my God, I was just trying to arrange this situation for you. And you took it the other way again. But he's so kind. He's like, I know. You're habituated to doing this. You've been doing this lifetime after lifetime. Well, I'll give you something else. I'll try to, think of something even more expert uh to get you to come closer to me. And there was one more that I wanted to read. Mm, yeah, the verses are even just the verses themselves is so nice. Here's the verse. Sorry, I had it highlighted on my Kindle. Now I gotta find it. Okay, last part of the purport. A pure devotee is never very anxious to go back to the kingdom of God. He entirely depends on the goodwill of the Lord. He is equally satisfied even if the Lord desires him to go to hell. The only desire that a pure devotee entertains is that he may always be in rapt attention with thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord regardless. Bhishmadev wanted this much only, that his mind be absorbed in thinking of the Lord and that he pass away thus. That is the highest ambition of a pure devotee. So everyone, next time I'm on an airplane, I'm going to print this out and take it with me. All right. Any questions? Oh, yes. Why?
Hare Krishna. Thank you for a wonderful class. I wasn't here for all of it, but I'll listen to the beginning later in the recording. But I wanted to ask, how do we remain in that clear state, a clear consciousness of we are actually at the mercy of Krishna's will? Because in very drastic situations, we can see, okay, clearly there's nothing I can do. But when you're just walking down the street, you're like, everything's fine. Like I can choose what I do. I can choose where I go. Like everything is, and obviously to an extent we have free will, but my main question is how do we remain in that state of remembering that Krishna is controlling everything and we are just at seeing everything as his will and as his mercy?
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much. So the first thing that came to mind is an example that can't remember if it was first from Prabhupada or from I can't remember if the example was first from Prabhupada or I heard it first from Devamitha Maharaj, but basically it is a bit bewildering, the whole concept of like we're actually not independent. I know this isn't your actual question, but it's like some background to it. Because it's like, well, if I want to raise my hand right now, then I just did it. So like, haha, Krishna looks like I am independent. But it's explained that it's like, speaking of airplanes, like when you're on an airplane and it's like your karma predestines you to like you're in the air and you're already going somewhere. So like, yeah, you have the choice on the flight. Do I want to stand up or sit down? Do I want to sit in seat A or seat C or have juice or coffee or like what? So there's these like little decisions, but your happiness and distress is like totally predestined. So anyway, because I like analogies and visuals, I guess one way to think of it, just from the example that I think it was Prabhupada that gave it. Tarka Prabhu, you can correct me if I'm wrong. that it's just like, yeah, I'm making all these decisions, but actually it's like I'm operating in like a bubble. So like Krishna is still ultimately in control. And then yeah, as I was saying in the class, like just reading is definitely very, very helpful, makes us super uh mm, see very clearly what's happening in the material world. And also, as Prabhupada says, you know, one has to oh, how does he say it? It's not that it's like along the lines of the oh, that one can't be optimistic about the material world and you know, it'd make advancement in spiritual life. So before, I don't know about you, but before coming to Bhakti, man, so many of my family members were like, you're so cynical, this and that. Like, why, you know, why do you see things negatively? And then you open up Prabhupada's books, it's like, well, here's why. Like, I feel so validated that, like, actually, this material world sucks. But we're cultivating knowledge of like the higher spiritual reality. So personally, I would say reading and helps to just like really keep our wits about us and not get illusion again. And we shouldn't underestimate like how powerful Maya is. That it's like, I mean, it's kind of warm out, and you know that's why it's harder to practice in places like, you know, the Gold Coast in Australia, Hawaii. Like I I was just reading to you right the other day that it's like this Burjan Prabhu's book, and he was because they were in Hawaii with Prabhupada and speaking about how Prabhupada said like this is the closest thing to a heavenly planet um, on the earth, and it's yeah, it's just difficult. Like the sea suffers, you know, everybody's out there surfing and it's all good. So if we're experiencing some distress, whether it's just the condition of where you're living in, like you can even take winter, for example. Um, I'm thinking about Shastakrit. He used to say like because I think maybe when he was in Philly or something, and he's just like, man, it was just so like the winter because it is like cold. It's like it was just so hellish. So if you use it properly, you can just be reminded of like, oh yeah, it's actually Krishna's mercy that I'm like experiencing these or noticing like the negative aspects of the material world because it helps me to want to get out and like taste something higher. Just like yeah, I guess if you have like a toxic friendship or some toxic relationship, then and you just like that person keeps doing like the toxic behavior and you just see it for what it is and you see it really clearly and you're just like you're actually like grateful that they keep doing it because then you get to see reality of like I actually deserve a lot better. So that's like with the material world, our toxic relationship with the material world. It's like, okay, you're showing your ugly side again. Like I think I deserve something better. So, yeah, that's really what I could say about just like cultivating knowledge. Um, and my meditation, like to your point, is to just anytime something bad happens or something that goes against my sense gratification, instead of like at that fork in the road, instead of going towards like, oh, that the habitual like material mind pattern of, oh, that means I need to try to control things more. It's like actually that means now's your chance to like Krishna is giving you a gift. So that means like turn toward him more. Does that help? Do you have anything? Well, okay. You don't have to.
It's just one question.
Sure.
So you mentioned about like you mentioned about talking about Krishna incessantly in the beginning. So I just wanted to make like a devil's advocate. So one time Srila Prabhupada was in France and he was preaching to some different like kind of social elites and they were talking and he was speaking with them and they were speaking on like all different varieties of topics like business and politics and like these people were into like horse cultivation so he was speaking about horses and then at one point they were saying oh we just had this new stallion has beautiful black hair and so his disciples listening to all this and just like thinking oh how are we going to bring Krishna to it? He's like oh Krishna also has very beautiful black hair and then Srila Prabhupada like immediately like turned to him to chastise and said yes but we're not talking about Krishna right now. I guess my question is there ever a time when a pure devotee was always thinking about Krishna, and he's always able to relate every situation, whether it's apparently mundane or apparently not mundane, to Krishna. So is there ever a time that he doesn't speak about Krishna or that he speaks about something else?
Yeah, thank you. That's a nice example. I had never heard that pastime. So I was thinking specifically in regards to like also cultivating others, or at least the way I have observed one way that works and how I've been trained is okay, the backdrop is there of even for somebody that's not a pure devotee, but the backdrop is there of like, how am I going to gradually bring this person closer to Krishna? And the first thing is in today's age, people are so lonely. They're so like they're 9 times out of 10 they're not coming to like a preaching center, for example, because they're like, Jai, yes, I want to hear all about Krishna. I'm like, I'm super interested in God and like this and that. Some rare people do. But most of the time it's like, I saw your sign, looks like good food and possibly good people, company. So it's like, yes, you start out by um it depends on the person, but not preaching to them so heavenly, like, I don't want to hear about your life. We only talk about Krishna here. It's like they're probably not going to come back because they don't feel very cared for. So, of course, I don't know what Prabhupada's, I mean, he is always thinking of Krishna. So, and he always is always thinking of, um, how to benefit the fallen conditioned souls. So ultimately, whatever tactic Prabhupada is using or however he's engaging, we can just automatically it's a given that he's doing things in such a way to bring people closer to Krishna. So that's with a pure devotee. Now, with myself, for example, or like mixed devotees, we have to be a bit, more careful that it's like, okay, well, am I just like engaging in this conversation because my material mind and my tongue still has like a taste for such things, like Prabhupada says, like the refuse, the topics of crows, or is the backdrop like, no, I actually am engaging in this because I want to help this person come closer to Krishna. Or like I said, I'm explaining about an issue I'm facing, or that I'm having trouble being Krishna conscious in this situation, with the intention of inquiring how can I come closer to Krishna. So that's such a nice example. It was a good devil's advocate example. Um, so yeah, with a pure devotee, it's like, well, we can automatically assume, however they're however they're speaking is the backdrop is to bring the person closer to Krishna or somehow or other to facilitate Krishna's service or like um for example, I was thinking of Devamrita Maharaj. He spoke to the one of the former prime ministers of New Zealand and was like finding out all this stuff about how the governments of the world actually work, how they're like trying to manipulate people and how there's like us versus them kind of stuff like that, and then is using it in his preaching, or let's say like reading a book on climate change or something like that. And it's like, well, is the intention just like, oh yeah, I'm just like, I really just want to like enjoy my senses, or is it I want to use this somehow down the line in Krishna service? So yeah, the consciousness is that's what it's based on. Okay, the doors are about to open. Thank you, dear devotee. Sorry, Jampati Mataji, we didn't get to your question. Okay, Hare Krishna, Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay. Nam Shanubhadayam Krishna Prasasara Bhudare Srimad Bhagavati Vedam Rasmani Itina. Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama 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 His divine grace, Lucy Bhakti Swami Prabhupada, this kind of Richard Prabhupada, Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivajaya Shri Srimad, His divine grace, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, Vindakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai, Ramacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki Jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। राधे कृष्ण गोपी गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधाकुंड गिरि गोवर्धन वृंदावन धाम की जय, मायापुर धाम की जय, जगन्नाथपुरी की जय, गंगा माई की जय, मुनुमा की जय, तुलसी देवी की जय, भक्ति देवी की जय, Samadeva Gauda Bhakti की जय। All glories to the Assembly's witness, all glories to the Assembly's, all glories to Shri glory to Shri Yeah. It's like I don't know going to like 20 section of university.